Alrighty, so today I'm going to do the preview that is similar to what I did with the review for the weekend's action of match week number 24, where I split the review into two parts, and that in this preview, I'll split it into two parts, where in part one, I'm going to look at the first 8 games, and then in part two, I'll look at the next 6 games. And the reason why I decided to do that is because we do have a game that's going to be happening later tonight, which is the Vancouver Whitecaps versus the Houston Dynamo. But we also will have 13 games that's going to be happening on Saturday, and there's going to be no games that's going to be happening on Sunday because it is the All-Star week, and that, whenever there is the All-Star game and All-Star week happening, there's usually never games on Sunday. So yeah, that's why we have tons of game happening on Saturday, and there's going to be a lot of overlap that is going to be happening on Saturday. So much so that I'm debating whether or not should I just groundhog and not watch some of these action, because whenever there's like 9 or 10 games that is overlapping at the same time, I'm basically just kind of throw my hands up and say, well, there's no point, of course, watching all of them and keeping all of that, because there's no way I can watch that much soccer at one point, and I might as well just groundhog. But we'll see whether or not if I'm going to do so. But like I said, we're going to first talk about the first game, which is the Vancouver Whitecaps versus the Houston Dynamo. That will happen later tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. Now, the Whitecaps have a 7-6-10 record, while the Dynamo 7-4-12. All-time meeting, the Whitecaps do lead the all-time meeting, but not by a lot. 8-5-7 over the Houston Dynamo. And in terms of the last 5 games for both of these teams, well, for the Whitecaps, it has not been a great form in the last 5 games. They've been winless in the last 5 games, getting a 1-1 draw against Nashville. Then they lost 3-1 at home against Chicago. They did get a 1-1 draw against Portland, got a 2-2 draw against FC Cincinnati, but also lost 3-1 at home to Minnesota. Now, for the Houston Dynamo, yeah, it's safe to say that they definitely do not want to remember what happened in the last game, where they got absolutely destroyed by the Philadelphia Union 6-0. Then they lost 2-1 to Minnesota at home before winning 2-1 on the road against the Quakes. But they also lost 3-1 against Austin FC, and then they got a 2-2 draw in that crazy El Capitan match that we remember a couple of weeks ago. And I think it's also safe to say that this is probably the desperation derby of the week. Every week I talk about, there's always that desperation derby, a game that both teams desperately need 3 points. This is probably one of them, because both of these teams, they still have a shot of making the playoffs, but they are starting to kind of are in the outside looking in terms of just a jumbo of mess that we have in the Western Conference right now, in terms of battle between all those teams through third all the way down to ninth place. And that both of these teams, I think they're outside of that, and they're just kind of on the outside looking in, but they desperately need all 3 points to do so. So we'll see who, of course, will do that. I mean, my money is definitely on the Whitecaps, because they have been doing well this season at home, though they are, of course, coming off of back-to-back 3-1 losses at home, and they're looking to turn that fortune around. Well, the Houston Dynamo, yeah, they definitely want to turn their fortune around with the way that they definitely need a bounce-back performance after just no doubt the most embarrassing loss that they've ever suffered in their franchise history, losing 6-0 to the Philadelphia Union. But now moving on, in terms of the next game, and the first of 13 games that's going to be happening, and we do have a matinee game between Atlanta United versus the Seattle Sounders. Now, in the beginning of the season, this would have definitely been a marquee matchup, and that a lot of people would be looking forward to. But now, as the season goes along, I mean, at least for Seattle, they have won a trophy, and they made history of becoming the first MLS team to win CCL. But besides that, it's been a tough season for the Seattle Sounders, and that second half resurgence that they usually go on at this point of the season, it hasn't really kicked off as good as they thought that they would be. Whereas they're playing against an Atlanta United team that, yeah, it's been inconsistency, and injuries have been just completely destroyed a team that is looking to be one of the most disappointing, if not the most disappointing teams this season. But this game will start at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 3:08 p.m. local time. The Sounders have a 10-2-11 record, while Atlanta has a 6-7-9 record. The Sounders, I believe they're currently in 7th place right now, so they're just above the red line, while Atlanta, I think they're in 11th in the Eastern Conference. But in terms of the all-time meeting, there's been 4 previous meeting between both of these teams. 3 of them ends in a draw, and the lone win between both of these teams was Seattle, winning a couple of games to go. But in the last 5 games for Atlanta United, as I said, inconsistency has been a problem. They got a 0-0 draw against the Chicago Fire. Then they lost 2-0 to the Galaxy. They did get a 1-1 draw at home against Orlando. Then got a much-needed 2-1 win against RSL following a game where Joseph Martinez definitely had some choice words in terms of the players and also the front office of this team. And then that, of course, came after when they had the most embarrassing loss at home, with them losing 3-0 to Austin FC. Now for the Seattle Sounders, they got a much-needed 1-0 win against FC Dallas. Before that, they lost 2-1 to LAFC. They did win 2-1 against Colorado, but also lose 1-0 against the Chicago Fire and also lost 1-0 to Nashville SC. And the road form has been a problem this season, at least in these last couple of games for the Seattle Sounders. So, judging by how this game is going to go, it's not going to be easy for them to get 3 points, but you definitely sense that they want to do so because, like I said, I still expect this team to make it to the playoffs, and I still expect the second half resurgence that they're going to be on is going to happen, especially now that they, of course, have Rui Diaz back, although, I'm not sure if he's going to be back in a way where he's going to start to get regular minutes, because I think in the last game he came off the bench, but yeah, we'll see whether if he is going to be starting against an Atlanta United team that they want to break out of this inconsistent stretch. Like they're still well in this thing, but it's getting to a point where they need to find some consistency if they want to get themselves above the red line. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is Charlotte FC versus the Chicago Fire, and this game is a definition of a playoff 6-pointer in the Eastern Conference, and you're going to get used of me saying that because we do have a couple of games that are like that, because Charlotte just above the red line right now with a 9-2-12 record, while the Chicago Fire, the hottest team right now in the Eastern Conference, going unbeaten in their last 4 games and have a record of 7-6-10. This game starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:08 p.m. local time, and I believe this is one of the last team that Charlotte has not faced in the Eastern Conference, because up to that point, I think they have at least faced an Eastern Conference team once, and that Chicago is one of the last teams that they have not faced, so this is the first ever meeting. But in terms of the last 5 games for Charlotte, I mean, it's been mixed result. I mean, they did get a 3-0 win against DC, but then they suffer an embarrassing 4-0 loss and were the victim in terms of the Italian dynamic duo Bernardeschi and Insigne decided to have a come-out party, and then they had that brutal 3-2 loss against Inter Miami in a game where this was really the first time that Charlotte FC actually imploded in their MLS expansion season. But before that, they arguably put up the best performance of the season, winning 4-1 against Nashville and then winning 2-1 against Houston in a game that we'll always remember as a match of them winning their first ever road game in franchise history. Now for the Chicago Fire, like I said, they've been red hot in these last couple of games, getting a 0-0 draw against Atlanta United at home, but also winning 3-1 on the road against Vancouver, winning 1-0 against the Seattle Sounders, winning 2-0 against the Vancouver Whitecaps, and then, they probably should have won that game against Columbus if they didn't blow a 2-0 lead, but like I said, they're well and truly in this playoff hunt, when a couple of weeks ago, it looked like that playoff hole was dead and buried. That's how much things can change in the Eastern Conference, and that goes the same with the Western Conference, where it feels like with how tight both conferences, especially in the playoff line, something tells me we could be heading into another crazy decision day kind of match week like we did last season. But yeah, certainly both of these teams would definitely want to get 3 points and to get themselves either staying above the red line or even climb above the red line in the case for the Chicago Fire. But now moving on, in the next match, we got the Columbus Crew versus NYCFC. Now this game, weather is permitted, because I did check the weather in terms of this game, and yeah, it's not looking good in terms of how there's going to be lightning storm throughout this game, so there could be a chance that this game could be delayed, and there could be a chance that when I do my review, which I'm going to do the review for this weekend's action, the exact same thing I did in the last weekend's action of match week number 24, where for the first part, I'm just going to talk about the first 8 games, and then the second part is the last 6 games, and this might be one of those. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. Last week I did the first 7 games, and then I look at the last 6 games because there was only 13 games, but you know what I mean in terms of how I'm pretty much just splitting the review into 2 parts, and this might be the game that could be left out in case if there is a weather delay. But Coming into this game, Columbus have a 7-9-6 record, while NYCFC have a 12-6-4 record. This game will start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. And in fact, that's going to be the last time I'm going to be mentioning the kickoff of a match, because the next 5 games basically start all at the same time. And yeah, I already talked about how there's always that congested schedule doing kind of like the meat of the action around this period. Oh, this week it took that to overdrive. I think there's going to be 8 games that's going to be overlapping each other, and hence this is why I said in the beginning of the preview I might think about just ground hopping and just kind of watch the highlights of out of these games, because that's just way too much soccer for me to watch, and there's no way I can keep up with every single game. But in terms of the all-time meeting, Columbus have a 9-4-7 record over NYCFC. And in the last 5 games, Columbus did finally have their unbeaten run come to an end by losing 2-1 to Montreal. But for that, they got a 0-0 draw against New England, got a 2-0 win against Cincinnati in the Hell is Real Derby, a 2-2 draw against DC United on the road, and then they've come from behind 3-2 win against the Chicago Fire. For NYCFC, in their first game without Tati Castellanos, it ended in a 0-0 draw, in a performance that, yeah, there's definitely a lot of alarm bell after how poor they were going forward on the attack against Montreal, and that they register the fewest shots that they have ever had in franchise history, with just 2 shots registered. But before that, in the farewell Tati Castellanos game, they got a 2-0 win against Inter Miami. Then they got a 1-0 win in the Hudson River Derby against the Red Bulls, a 1-0 win on the road against FC Dallas, and then a 2-2 draw between them and Atlanta United. And keep in mind, NYCFC, they're also trying to chase down the Philadelphia Union for that top spot. I believe they're only 3 points back, and they do have a game in hand over the Philadelphia Union. So, they're a team that not only is looking to make it to the playoffs, which I think they are going to, but their objective is trying to get top spot and maybe even win the Supporters Shield. I mean, that would be a great thing for them to win MLS Cup one year, and then the very next year they follow that by winning the Supporters Shield. Though, again, there is that Supporters Shield curse, and that maybe winning that shield might not be the best thing. Though, again, if you ask any NYCFC fans, they don't care. It's all about trophies, and keep in mind there is another trophy that they could be up for, which is the Campeones Cup in next month in September. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see whether or not if NYCFC can keep track of the Philadelphia Union in terms of that top spot, and we'll see whether or not if Columbus can bounce back, because yeah, that was a brutal loss against Montreal in a game they led pretty much the whole way, and then they gave up two goals late in the game to drop all 3 points at home. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is the Atlantic Cup between DC United versus the New York Red Bulls, and this is a match that sees DC being 6-3-13, while the Red Bulls have a 10-6-7 record. All-time meeting in terms of the Atlantic Cup, DC does leads that all-time meeting, 43-18-38 over the New York Red Bulls. But the last 5 games for DC, yeah, the last game was brutal. In fact, these last couple of games, and really for this past month or two, it's been tough times for DC United. They lost 3-0 against Charlotte FC. They did have that 2-1 win against Orlando City, and that was kind of just another classic Wayne Rooney just simply owns Orlando City, whether if he's a coach or a player. But before that, they lost 2-1 to Montreal, losing 2-0 to Minnesota, and then drawing 2-2 against the Columbus Crew. For the New York Red Bulls, yeah, they were involved that shootout against the Colorado Rapids, which they lost 5-4. And then they won 4-3 against Austin FC. Then they lost 1-0 against NYCFC, got a 1-1 draw against or actually no, they lost 1-0 to NYCFC. They got a 1-1 draw against FC Cincinnati. I'm sorry if I feel a little bit tired, because again, I'm doing this right after I just finished work. But after that, they did get a 1-0 win against Sporting KC. And I'm also interested to see how the Red Bulls defense is going to be in this game, because let's just say, one performance I didn't mention here in the last 5 games, and keep in mind this is only MLS game, is that they also lost 5-1 to Orlando City in that U.S. Open Cup semifinal, and they have pretty much giving up 13 goals in the last 3 games. Like, giving up 13 goals in the last 3 games is not a recipe to win games, and that, yeah, it's kind of alarming how shaky and how just leaky this Red Bulls defense has been, when throughout the entire part of this season, this was one of the biggest strengths of this team. So yeah, we'll see whether if they can fix that, and especially against a DC team that I know DC of course are trying to add more attacking power, and as I'll talk about a little bit later in my video, looking at some of the transfer moves I've done the last 24 hours. They just recently signed Christian Benteke from Crystal Palace, which, yeah, that is definitely a move that kind of came out of complete left field, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as I'll do that video looking at all the moves that has been made during this Friday. But yeah, we're going to see who, of course, win this Atlantic Cup in this historic rivalry. But now moving on in the next match, we got Montreal versus Inter Miami, which will start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:30, 8 p.m. local time. And actually, I just mentioned the time when I literally just said a couple of games ago I'm not going to mention this. You get the habit, of course, talking about the kickoff of this game, but for now I think I won't mention it again. But Montreal does have a 12-3-8 record, while Miami has an 8-5-10 record, and that win that they have against the Quakes didn't really push themselves above the red line, but it has pushed themselves within touching distance, and actually are now the first team out of the playoffs if the playoffs did started today. Now, in terms of the all-time meeting, Montreal does lead at 3-0-1, and in terms of the last 5 games for Montreal, it's been a pretty good form. They won 2-1 against Columbus. They did drew 0-0 against NYCFC, but then they won 2-1 against DC United, won 1-0 against Toronto in the Canadian Classic, and then lost 2-1 at home against Sporting KC. For Inter Miami, they got only their second road win of the season by winning 1-0 against the Quakes. Then it was a 4-4 draw that they play against FC Cincinnati before a 2-0 loss against NYCFC, and a come from behind 3-2 win against Charlotte FC, and then they also lost 2-1 against the Philadelphia Union. And again, inconsistency is starting to become a problem, and they're started to kind of had the similar issue that they had in the expansion season. But at least for a team that didn't have a lot of expectation, and a team that we maybe didn't expect them to be a playoff contender, I think Inter Miami fans will definitely take it. Though, again, this is not going to be an easy task because they are playing against a Montreal side that is looking to continue this good run. Though that good run doesn't really include in terms of their home form, because their home form hasn't been very good in these last couple of home games. They have dropped points at home, and including losing games at home. So there could be a chance that Inter Miami might have a shot in this one, especially if they can, of course, play the same way that they did against the Quakes, which I thought they played very, very well. But that being said, I don't think that's a good judgment point of how they can continue that momentum, because I'm pretty sure everybody plays well when they face against the Quakes. Like, the Quakes is literally a team that give up 3 points every single week, and Inter Miami was the benefit fact of that, but also the fact that they do have a short week, and that I haven't even mentioned the fact that there are some of these teams play in the middle of the week, and that they have to travel a long way to play their game and travel across the other side of the country on a short week. That's the case for Inter Miami. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see whether fatigue could be an issue, especially this is also the third game in the past 7 days for them. But now moving on, we got Orlando versus the New England Revolution, which will start at the same time as I mentioned before. But Orlando has an 8-6-9 record, while New England have a 6-9-7 record. All-time meeting, the Revs does have a 6-7-3 record over Orlando City, and in the last 5 games, they lost 2-1 to DC United, lost 1-0 against the Philadelphia Union. They drew 1-1 against Atlanta United, drew 1-1 against the Colorado Rapids, and their last win was against Inter Miami by winning 1-0. But it's safe to say that Orlando City has now started becoming a team that isn't just inconsistent anymore in league play, but now started to become bad at. Now, that goes the same for the Revs too, because they also have been gone on a winless run. In fact, I think they haven't won a single game in the past 6 games, and that includes them drawing 0-0 against Toronto FC, drawing 0-0 against Columbus Crew, losing 2-1 against the Philadelphia Union, losing 4-2 against NYCFC, and then drawing 2-2 against FC Cincinnati. And it's no wonder why this is the team that is not getting above the red line, because when you are going on a winless run, you're not going to make a lot of ground in terms of finding yourself above the red line, and we'll see whether or not if they can do so. And in fact, I would say that, I talk about the Vancouver versus Houston game being the desperation derby. This might be another one of them, with both of these teams desperate to get all 3 points in this game. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is FC Cincinnati versus the Philadelphia Union. also known as the Pat Nolan Derby, also known as the Chris Albright Derby, but in this case, it's the Harris Medunian farewell derby, as this, of course, is going to be his very last game. And I mentioned what a storybook end. The fact that, you know, his last game in his MLS career would be against the team that gave him the chance to come to MLS just a couple of years ago. But coming into this game, Cincinnati have a 7-8-8 record, while the Philadelphia Union have a 12-9-2 record. And in terms of the all-time meeting, well, the Union has been perfect against Cincinnati's 5-2-0. That's their record. And the last 5 games for Cincinnati, I mean, this is another team that have really struggled in these past couple of games. They drew 4-4 against Inter Miami in a game that they clearly had a chance to get a victory, but they blew it late in this one. But then they had a 1-1 draw against Nashville SC. They lost 2-0 in the Hell Is Real Derby against Columbus. Then a 2-2 draw between them and Vancouver, and then a 1-1 draw against the New York Red Bulls. Well, for the Philadelphia Union, I think they're the only team that I'm going to talk about, looking at the last 5 games, that have won every single one of them, which pretty much makes them now the hottest team in the league, because, again, I don't think any team has won 5 in a row. And that 5-game winning streak continued with them demolishing the Houston Dynamo 6-0. Then they won 1-0 against Orlando City. Won 2-1 against the New England Revolution. Won 2-1 against Inter Miami on the road. And then they also put up a 7 spot against DC United in a game that, you know, for DC fans, that's a game to forget. But for Union fans, it's definitely a game to salivate, alongside the 6-0 win that they had against the Houston Dynamo. And yeah, we'll see whether, if that strong form that Jim Curran team is on can continue in this one, because, you know, playing against FC Cincinnati, well, they haven't been losing a lot of games during this winless run. They're drawing way too many games, and when you draw way too many games, and especially drawing games and dropping points at home like they have done at an alarming rate this season, yeah, this could be a team that maybe could slip out of the playoffs. But I think that's okay. I think FC Cincinnati fans would take it. I mean, it will be a little bit disappointed that they were in the playoff hunt for a long time, but they dropped down in the end. But the fact that they're in the playoff hunt is a miracle itself, because this team, you know, coming into the season, they were trying to avoid winning the wooden spoon for the 4th year in a row, and I think it's safe to say that they're probably not going to win. Like, unless if they decide to go in a complete disastrous free fall, I'm pretty sure this team is going to actually, for the first time in their franchise history in MLS, to not finish dead last in the league. But that being said, that is pretty much it for a quick preview looking at the 8 games that's going to be happening, in terms of one game happening one game happening today, and then the first 7 game that's going to be happening tomorrow. Like I said, I will do the preview of the last 6 remaining game, probably during when the game between Atlanta versus Seattle finish, because, you know, we do have a 2-hour gap to basically kill in terms of the next games that is going to happen. That kicks off a busy 12-game action on Saturday night. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games, and make sure you leave your prediction for all 8 games that is going to be happening in match week number 24. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.